one more time that we're coming up on our 3rd anniversary of doing this. And this is organic. This is a process. All of us have grown together in this, and somehow or another, in being in this environment, we have had the experience of not only sharing parts of our lives with each other, but learning stuff we never would have learned any place else. You're not going to find the church any place that does what we do here, and there are some great churches, as we saw in San Francisco at the Glide Church. So that's that piece of information. Now, I want to tell you, this is going to be very brief today, but I want to tell you about something that's happening to me. I lived for a long time thinking, okay, you have to meditate, and you have to do this religiously. And so finally, in the last 6 months or so, I've just simply allowed it to happen. It's not something I do. It's not work. It doesn't require effort. It's just something I do. And what I do is I go outside in the morning as early as I can, and sometimes that's 10 o'clock, and I sit out there and I read several books. And I read sometimes a page, sometimes several paragraphs, sometimes a lot. But what I find happening is that all of a sudden what I'm reading, and I'll tell you what I'm reading, but what I'm reading is starting to confirm every other piece that I'm reading. I'm reading The 7 Sacred Flames, which some of us are reading. I'm reading Telos 3, the story of another dimensional community in Northern California. I'm reading The Present Crisis by Gopi Krishna. I'm reading The Way to Self-Knowledge by Gopi Krishna. And I'm reading Secrets of Kundalini in Panchastavi. So, and I'm reading just a little tiny bit. But this morning, I had the most amazing experience. Before you make a judgment about what happened in Colorado, as far as I am concerned, the jury is still out on what happened. Because it's very hard for me to believe that a 24-year-old kid with no real job, who is in a graduate program for abnormal psychology and neurological science, can amass $20,000 worth of the finest high-tech military equipment and booby-trap an apartment in such a way with the most high-tech material that you can't even get anyplace else, in such a way that they can't even un-booby-trap it, and then go in and shoot a whole bunch of people and then say, okay, you got me. But it doesn't, something doesn't make sense, but it plays into our idea that there is always the lone gunman. So this morning I read this, and I thought, boy, this makes so much incredible sense to me. I may not be able to read this as well as I'd like to read it, but my heart is entirely in what I'm going to read you. How did the practice of mass murder start, and killing of civilians become a now accepted feature of warfare? Where is the interstate decision or an agreement adopted by the world to use this deadly blight in future wars? 'Tis all an unbecoming, shifty game of superpowers, unmindful of the end, to thrust a cursed contrivance on the world, and keep themselves and all the race in fear of death, destruction, lethal injuries, or cureless ailments for all time to come. For heaven's sake, O you much honored chiefs, you brilliant penmen, and you great elite of every clime and country on earth, forbear and not let your ambitious plans for more dominion, prestige, markets, wealth, resources, domination, or revenge pervert your thinking and subvert your will. And losing sight of what a war would cost when fought with nuclear engines, Pray, restrain your ardor, and in calmer moments ask yourself, how can you gain your cherished ends if only after a few hours of fight with missiles, Earth would be a wilderness, and all that on which you now build your plans dissolve into air like a vanished dream, and you will find yourself, if still alive, the monarch of the waste surrounding you. Now, it's poetry, and I understand that, but then I go back to an earlier page, and here's the theme repeated a totally different way. And this, I have studied this for 3 months, and I'm pretty sure I can read this right. The monarch, in disguise, we call the soul, encircled by the ego, passion, lust, desire, ambition, greed, and other foes, tarries upon the earth in mute accord with laws eternal it itself has framed, dressed as a mortal ranking high or low in utter ignorance of its estate, that 'tis a sovereign king in its own right, the crowning glory of the universe, whom in our foolish pride of knowledge we ignore or even deny, to learn in time when troubled by repeated pricks from nature, we shake ourselves free of the enshrouding lust, and waking up to our eternal life become the world and its creator both. And what that says to me is, very simply, that we have created a world, and it's supported by everyone, especially churches, where we have been taught that we are powerless, sniveling sinners who need to be judged and redeemed and all of this stuff. But if you look up in the Bible and in the New Testament and in the words of Jesus, Jesus mentions the words sin, sinning, sinner, and sin, sinning, sinner, those three, only 22 times in all of the entire New Testament. The story is not about that. The story is about the fact that we, each one of us, and if you go back and read Psalm 82, you will find it says, you are gods roaming the face of the earth. Now we have got to wake up to who we are. And that's what we're trying to do here. It's very important that we get this, because the future depends on our ability to understand we have incredible powers at our disposal to change the very fabric of our society. And the alternative is destruction. Now, if you listen to Bruce Lipton and Tom Campbell, toward the end of the second part of their interview, they said, listen, we're in a race here. We either solve these problems or we're going to blow ourselves up. And they know that, and we know that. And what we have before us is a community that can work together on this and to explore things. And one of the things, that the reason I told you the books that I'm reading is because for me, these books, I have to have something that seamlessly matches something else, just to verify one side or the other. And this morning when I was reading another part of this same book, it was said, we have the power to move to different dimensions. And as we grow spiritually, these dimensions will open up to us. And they are there for us to enjoy. So that's all I want to say today, but I want you to think about the I want to say just one more word. I want you to think about the monarch in disguise we call the soul. That's the subject, and that's worth your thinking about. The monarch in disguise that we call the soul. Okay.
Action.
This indigenous grandfather and his grandson were talking, and the grandson says, I feel like I have two wolves inside of me fighting. And one of them is always angry and always at the other or something, and the other one is accepting and loving and calm and compassionate. And he said, "Grandfather, what is this, and which one of these is going to win?" And the grandfather was quiet for a long time, and then he said, "The one you feed will be the one that wins." And it's just that simple. That if you feed the fear wolf, you're going to have a life full of proof that you were right to be fearful. And if you feed the wolf of love, you will also have a life of proof that love, in fact, is the dominating force. And if you want to see, before you turn it off, before you see, if you haven't seen it, go back. If you have seen it, go back. If you haven't seen it, and Lynn can say something about this, the last half of the interview with Bruce Lipton and Tom Campbell gives the best scientific discussion of the validity of love that you're going to hear. Is that right, Lynn?
That's absolutely correct.
And it had an effect on you, didn't it?
Yeah, I'd never, well, do you want me to?
Yeah.
Before I watched that, I've always thought, well, we have a universe that's focused on love. Where's the universe that's focused on the opposite? You know, if we're supposed to be a beings and all this galaxies of loving beings and everything's, why isn't there galaxies and people that are warriors and they hate and they kill and everything? It's logical to me. You know, if you got one, you're going to have another. But the proof is that in entropy, to make things better, it can't destroy itself. So it has to be love. The whole universe has to be love, so it does create, does think good for the other person, the other life form, the other whatever it is. If it is a destroyer world or universe, there is no entropy, there's no growth, everything implodes on itself.
Increased entropy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's, well, whatever. It doesn't
And it
procreate, it doesn't expand, it doesn't keep on, it doesn't, well, whatever, you know, some
Not sustainable.
potato, who knows. It won't sustain itself. It won't grow. So I concluded that the only way that anything can expand and live and grow and nourish and be better is through love, or caring, or cooperation, or whatever you want to put it there.
Whatever.
It's not hate, deceit, greed, all the opposite things.